wasn't calling for that. I don't want to be that kind of cheap Nets supporter. It's like, oh, that should have been a flagrant two, because I don't get down like that. I wanted the Nets to beat them at full strength. That said, Embiid rubbed a lot of Nets fans the wrong way. But you can't really stress enough the importance of a guy like Ed Davis. What he did to Embiid in game one was the reason why the Nets won that game. That Joe Harris was hitting shots, obviously.
Let me be the wet blanket here, though, as the non-Nets guy, and say I think that this leads us into kind of the discussion, which is the crucial nature of Ed Davis on this team speaks to the fact that as much as Kenny Atkinson and Sean Marks have done an absolutely phenomenal job, there's still a gap in the talent level between the Nets and a team like the Sixers where they need a guy like Ed Davis. He's crucial to their plans, which is not, that's not a great sign for your chances to compete for a championship right now. And I don't think anyone was thinking the Nets would, but I think it does speak to the level of improvement, which leads us to the question, Pooch, of where do the Nets go next? Because I think that's what's on everyone's mind. They've kind of had that progress you spoke to, progress versus process, as you put it. And now, where does the progress go? Do they keep building internally? Or we'll have to do a little tease here for your article. Do they have a chance to maybe reel in a big fish this summer?
I think you want to go with the latter, especially from a Nets perspective. Obviously, you'd love to see D'Angelo back. You'd love to see them sign one of the max free agents and bring some of those guys back. Ed Davis, obviously, who was great this season for them in the backup role. Jared Dudley, obviously, serving as the veteran leader, and DeMar Carroll just being that Swiss Army knife. But look, guys, if they have all the tools to get two free agents, and if one of them happens to be Kyrie attached to a KD or Kawhi, just speaking hypothetically here, they obviously have to go for it. And the thing that's kind of cruddy about that is, they would have to let a guy like D'Angelo Russell go, somebody who basically epitomizes everything that this culture, this franchise has preached since they took over. When you talk about a 23-year-old who proved everybody from his past wrong, it was his second chance. He's still developing. He became an all-star. He's a most improved player candidate. So, he grew this connection with the fan base that was organic, and to see somebody like that go would be tough. But at the same time, you wonder, keeping D'Angelo versus getting two max free agents, are you looking at being a 4 or 5 seed for the next couple of years until these guys grow up, or do you want to be a championship contender right away? And a lot of that is to obviously be determined, but it's going to be an interesting summer. I personally do think that D'Angelo is going to end up coming back, but right now, at player exit interviews, at the general manager and coaches exit interviews, there was zero commitment there. I think it's out there. It's obvious that they're in this game. They're right there with the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Knicks to get somebody big, maybe two.
Well, I understand what you're saying about Russell, because I remember right after Brooklyn lost Game 5, someone asked him if he was going to be active in free agency, and Russell's response was, "Hey, I just left college. I haven't decided if I'm going pro yet," which I thought was a very good answer, and it shows his maturity and how far he's come since the Nick Young drama and the trade to Brooklyn. But I want to get into Russell, Ben. I'm going to do my heat check of the week right now. I wanted to do this on last week's show, but it was still kind of too soon from the Nets loss. But I think the Nets are in a delicate situation with Russell, and they have to handle the situation with care or things could get messy. Obviously, he's Brooklyn's first homegrown all-star since Brook Lopez. You said it, Pooch, he's 23 years old. Does that mean he's worth a Devin Booker-type contract? I mean, will the Nets only look to sign him if they don't get Kyrie Irving? Because, Pooch, I personally think, given Irving's attitude, age, and injury history, I think Russell at 23 years old has the higher ceiling. Marks has to be very careful here, and you have to hope his loyalty to Brooklyn shines this summer. Obviously, we know it's a business, but my ideal scenario, which I know is far-fetched, is Kevin Durant signs with Brooklyn, wants to play with Karis LeVert next to him on the wing, Jared Allen, 21 years old at center, and D'Angelo Russell as his point guard. Do you see this as something feasible? I know Kevin Durant's the big fish. I know Brooklyn's going big game hunting, But to me, I think that's the Nets' best chance at staying the course because all this team is missing, aside from a stretch four, is a game changer, and that's what Kevin Durant provides.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when you're talking about Kevin Durant, I think immediately the name Kyrie comes up. The two have been talking all year long. We've known this since last summer, and it still sticks true to this day. So there is that factor. If Kevin Durant comes, how much power does Sean Marks have? Because at that point, it's KD and Rich Kleiman telling him that he's only signing if Kyrie comes. So in that case, what do you do? But the name to look at if you want to keep D'Angelo and get a big free agent is a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who probably isn't going to demand someone else come with him. He isn't that type of player. He would fit it right in culturally and on the floor. And then there's of course other names like Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler too that could fit right into that mix. But again, I think like you can't. It's hard. It's a good problem for them to have. But like you said, they can't mess around with this too much because if they wait, D'Angelo could just get that poison pill contract like they've been doing to other teams all the past 3 off seasons. And the Nets, I think, have a number for D'Angelo, and if it exceeds that, I think they're going to let him walk.
Yeah, and it's a great point, and I think on top of that, in the article that Pooch wrote, and this is up on sny.tv, and I recommend anyone listening, especially Nets fans, to read it. There's some really interesting quotes because guys like DeMar Carroll say things like, if you're a top-tier player, this is an organization you want to be at, from coaching to the performance. Jared Dudley talks about how there's a different level of care within the organization for the players, how there's 30 people on the staff. They call you every morning, see how you feel. That Dr. Martin O'Malley is involved with Brooklyn, who's one of the top surgeons, and all of these things. And they give off this vibe that they're ready. And I think it's very interesting because more and more now, it feels like it's a players' league. And I don't know if you agree, Pooch, but it feels like this year one of the big culture shifts has been that the league has moved even further to a player-dominated one. That the gatekeepers are kind of falling away and it's becoming more and more player-oriented. And I felt like just reading your article, it really gave me the impression that the players on this team are happy to have a star player come, and they're saying good things to everyone they know about this organization, and it's kind of given them maybe not street cred, but some level of like authenticity and popularity within the league because people know if they come to Brooklyn they'll get treated the right way, which isn't always the case with certain organizations. I mean, we could mention one, James Dolan. We could go to some other organizations, but there have been some lesser organizations. I'm a Bulls fan, so we know how that one goes. Do you feel like that's an advantage as they hit this off season?
Without a doubt. And I tried to make it a point that, it's not the second or third year player that's saying this. It's DeMar Carroll or Jared Dudley, who's been around for 12 years and has been on several teams and has seen what the league is like. I think these intangible things that people don't see, the way they take care of their families, the way they make sure they're okay, that their work to life balance is all right, that they maintain their bodies and they watch over and make sure that they have enough rest and just little things like that the performance team that they have brings to the table is just, it's so important to players. I think what the Nets are trying to, tell you is that we have things and we are way ahead of the game, more so than people realize. Only the people that have been here can understand the things that we could provide you with. Now, the Nets have never signed a big free agent. I got to be honest with you. I think Ed Davis is the best free agent they've ever signed in their
So
history.
not Travis Outlaw, 5 years, 35 million in 2000. What was that? 2010.
God.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah. But it's that feeling of we have things that and several of them that these other organizations with cap space simply cannot offer you. And you look at 2 of those 4 teams, including the Nets, including the Clippers, the Lakers and the Knicks, their culture, their leadership, their ownership is it's just a mess. And I think the Nets subtly are saying, you could go there, but deal with all the dysfunction there. You could come here and we'll take care of you. We'll take care of your family. You don't have to worry about any of those off-court things that mean a lot to players when they sign somewhere. And let's not forget, we're in New York City.
Yep.
Like this is all legit. And again, like I said, it's just the intangible things. Obviously, the winning only helped. Like I said it in the piece. A source told me like the postseason, the playoffs, they had a good shot at free agents before that, but that only helped their case because they
Yeah.
finally got to showcase their young talent, their young core, a player like Karis LeVert.
And the other thing I thought that was really interesting that you just mentioned, and you put this in the piece too, and I thought this was great. And I don't want to step on the piece too much because anyone who's listening, make sure you read it. It's great. But there's a great line about kind of the Knicks in here, which I thought was interesting because there's clearly a little bit of a budding rivalry. I think Knicks fans are trying to look the other way, but I think there's clearly a little bit of the two brothers starting to compete a little bit, and this is kind of the off season where we could see that come to fruition. And Dudley specifically calls out the Knicks and says, there's a little more media to deal with and a little more scrutiny. And I thought that was really interesting because we saw a guy like Paul George opt to go on a smaller market. He liked being kind of the second guy, a little out of the spotlight, not having to deal with as much of that media scrutiny that he might have had if he went to LA. And you do wonder just a little bit with Kawhi Leonard thinking about the Clippers allegedly, if some of these guys think, I could go to Brooklyn, I could win a lot of games, and I don't have to deal with the circus that is the Knicks. I don't have to deal with the circus that comes with being on the Lakers. I don't have to deal with even the circus that comes with being on the Bulls every year. And I can just kind of enjoy the game and just play basketball.
Yeah. I remember Om Young Musuk of ESPN telling me a couple of years ago that he referred to the Nets as one of the um, smallest big market teams in the NBA. So yeah, like you don't have to deal with as much media scrutiny, and things are a little bit easier for you in the sense that the Nets have always kind of been a small market team when they were in Jersey, and it kind of translated over to Brooklyn. Only the fact that now they're in New York City and they have all these beautiful amenities and great different ownership and things like that. Um, I guess there is like a little bit of there's less pressure coming to Brooklyn than the Knicks, and especially because they do have that foundation around them. They have people looking out for them, I mentioned, but they have a team that's ready to win. The only other team that could really say that has two max spots is are the Clippers.
Yeah, the Clippers are definitely going to be a team in contention. Now, just looking ahead at the draft real quick, obviously the lottery's in 2 weeks. The Nets will not be a part of that. They have their own draft pick for the first time, and I can't even tell you how long. They have 3 picks, 17, I think it's 27 and 31, I believe it is.
Yes.
So do you think that they'll have to package one of those picks and maybe a Janan Musa or a Rodion Kurucs to take Alan Crabb's contract off the books? Because I think that is where Sean Marks has to start this offseason, this draft. After that top, with the Duke players and the John Morants, it really isn't that loaded. So do you see Marks potentially trying to package an asset just to get Alan Crabb off their books?
Without a doubt. And I think that's the most inevitable move he's going to make this summer. The first thing he has to do in order to clear up space, that first max cap space, is getting rid of Crabb's contract. So I think it's just a matter of which pick they have to attach to it, because let's not forget Alan Crabb, despite it being a very two disappointing seasons in Brooklyn, he is not a bad basketball player, and he only has 1 year left in his contract, so he might be serviceable elsewhere. It's not like he's this bad player, but they're definitely going to have to get rid of a draft pick and maybe even a guy like John and Musa, who has been brought up. You would hope that they don't have to give up too much to get rid of him, but at the same time, you look, even this past off season, they were the ones on the opposite side of the salary dump. They were the ones taking in salary dump so they could acquire a guy like D'Angelo Russell or a draft pick or whatever it might be. So I see it coming from a mile away. I've seen it coming from a mile away. It's just a matter of, how much do they have to give up with Crabb?
Yeah, that's true. And looking around the league at the playoffs, and Ben, obviously, when we let Puccio go, we'll get into this more in depth. But there are 5 former Nets from recent memory all playing on these playoff teams. You have Brooke Lopez, obviously, who I'm rooting for all the way. Get this man a ring.